recognizes the Honorable Member for Pinewood.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Next. Wait, I'm going.
Huh? He's the last one. It doesn't really matter. And
Go ahead, go ahead.
it doesn't really
Okay. East Grand Bahama is going. Okay. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for Pinewood for allowing me to proceed. Madam Speaker, I rise to make my contribution on the Consumer Protection Bill of 2023 on behalf of the good and special people of the East Grand Bahama constituency, who I am eternally grateful for and privileged to be able to speak in this place on their behalf. Madam Speaker, the topic of consumer protection is extremely important. And I have taken a look and reviewed the Consumer Protection Bill of 2023, but I've also taken a look at the Consumer Protection Act of 2007. And in comparing both of the 2023 and the 2007, I could not see a lot of change in what is in the 2023 and what is in the 2007. The Free National Movement also left a Consumer Protection Amendment Bill before we left office. There was a draft Consumer Protection Amendment Bill, which I suspect is part of what contributed to the new terms in the 2023. And I say that not to take anything away from what we are doing here today, because it is an extremely important topic, and the bill is an extremely important bill. But I also want to sort of put it into context. So, for example, the Prime Minister, the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador spoke about protecting minors and protecting those with disabilities. But this was a section that was already in the 207 bill. Much of what 206. But much of what the member for South Andres spoke about was also in the 206 bill, 206 Act as well. But again, what this bill does add, and it was spoken by the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, was, as far as I could tell in terms of reviewing it, it does add a harassment and coercion clause where no business person or provider is able to physically harass or mentally harass or coerce a consumer to take their goods or to take their services. A new term also is the offering gifts and prizes term, which again is an important term that to be added. And I think what was spoken about by the member for Cat Island, when I looked at the old act and this new bill, it did not include the pyramid selling scheme, which again is a relevant term. It's something that is relevant in the Bahamas today, and something that members ought to be members it's an important term that should be included. So,
You're rough now.
but I think more importantly, outside of the adding the few terms, the few new terms that are included, this bill is far more clearer and easier to read than the '06 bill. Because the '06 bill, it is a difficult bill to read. It does not put things into sections. It does not have headings. And so it is, what is being done here today is important because it does modernize and it does make it clearer and makes it easier for us to read and for the consumer to follow. And I think that's, again, an important point that needs to be made is that, consumers' rights and protecting consumers, if the consumer cannot understand what his rights are, or if there are difficulties in being able to translate and present it to the consumer, then quite frankly, it makes it difficult for them to be able to take advantage of it if they cannot understand it or if they cannot be able to articulate it. So again, a lot of what is being spoken about today is in the 2006 Act already. And it already provides those protections, already provides a number of those protections in the Act. But again, this exercise is necessary. I agree it is necessary because as I said, it makes it clearer and makes it easier to read for the consumer. Madam Speaker, though, the major issue for consumers, though, I think there are some other issues for consumers that are even more important than those new things that are put in this bill. Yes, pyramid schemes are important, and being able to protect the public from pyramid. I remember there was a big pyramid scheme in Grand Bahama a few years ago. What's that? Oh, okay. There was a big pyramid scheme in Grand Bahama. I'm not sure what they're talking about, but I know what I'm talking about. but there was a major pyramid scheme in Grand Bahama, and a lot of persons were caught up in this. A lot of persons were interested in it. I remember persons coming to me and asking me to attend some meeting where there were persons who was presenting this. If you buy this, or this, if you come up with this amount of money, you would be able to. No, I accept that. I accept that. If you come up with this amount of money, then it will allow you to be a part of some. It will allow you to be a part of some pool. And that pool, you then gain from however many people can buy into this pool. I mean, that's what, again, the pyramid scheme is all about. So I accept that's important. But I think even more important than that is the high prices that people are paying for things like electricity. And I don't intend to go into detail on that. But it is something that I believe concerns consumers more than just those things like pyramid schemes. I think the consumers are also facing high inflation prices. That is, I believe, even more important to them today than dealing with, things like pyramid schemes and those things that are in the Act. Consumers are also facing things like high food prices. I mean, high food prices today is a crisis. It is something that is in the forefront of every single Bahamian that visits a food store. It is in the forefront of their mind as to the amount that persons are paying for these high food prices. And this is something that is being portrayed across the world. Governments are facing how do they react, what actions can they take to at least buffer what's happening with the high food prices. And we were told, maybe a year or so ago that they would be beginning to come down. But they're not coming down. In fact, they're still going up. One of the things that was said yesterday by the central bank governor in his report was that inflation is still continuing to rise. Even when you look at what level it rose last year and you compare what level it is rising this year, it continues to go up. So I believe that the consumers, the public, is facing these issues, and they ought to be things that we focus on addressing. Not saying that this is not important, because dealing with protecting consumers is a part of dealing with it.
That's right.
A part of protecting consumers is protecting them from high prices. A part of protecting consumers is making sure that they are not unfairly priced, making sure that they are not unfairly dealt with when it comes to dealing with these prices. And as I said, perfectly honest, I believe people complain more. The public complains more about prices than they do about pyramid schemes. Not saying that pyramid schemes is not important, but I believe the public interest and complaint is heavier when it comes to dealing with high food prices, because that's something that they face every single day.
Yes, sir.
Every day they go to the food store. Every day they buy gas. Every day they have to buy cooking gas and so on. That is a huge issue for every single consumer. Central bank, as I said yesterday, what the central bank governor said, and I quote him, average domestic consumer price inflation, as measured by the All Bahamas Retail Price Index, increased to 4.8% during the 12 months to July from 4.7% in the same period of 2020, reflected of the pass-through effects of higher global oil prices. This is what he said also, Madam Speaker. Specifically, average costs for recreation and culture and for food and non-alcoholic beverages accelerated. It continues to go up, accelerated, and this was just made yesterday. Accelerated to 15.5% and 10.4% respectively, from 3.7. Now, I'm not sure what accounts for that jump from 3.7 to 15.5%. A lot of that might be tourism prices and hotels and those sorts of things going up. But for the ordinary Bahamian, a 3.7 jump to 15.5 jump is a huge jump for that 1 year period. And that's something that ought to be looked at as to what has accounted for that jump. But just looking at the food and non-alcoholic jump was 8% last year to 10% this year, or 10.4% this year, which again is a huge jump. And this is present day. This isn't something that happened a year or 2 years ago. So we are still in the middle of an inflation crisis. We are still in the middle of a high food price crisis. This is still something that Bahamians are facing every single day. And part of our struggle, part of our fight as those who represent the public and those who represent the consumer is for us to continue to advocate for action to be taken to deal with this crisis of high food prices. We cannot just sit back and hope for things to get better. But we must every day do our best to try and find innovative ways to decrease the price of food. And we cannot just say that these prices are increasing outside of the country, and so that don't have any concern for us. We must just deal with it. But we must find effective ways to be able to combat these high food prices. Governments all over the country, all over the world, are dealing with it, and they are putting together different packages and putting together different things to be able to fight what we do with these high prices. And I'll come back to that later on in my presentation. But, Madam Speaker, protection of consumers also means protecting those online consumers. And while the Consumer Protection Bill covers goods and services, there is the Electronic Communication Transactions Act that specifically deals with electronic and on e-commerce. And then there's also the Computer Misuse Act that also deals with cybercrime and those kinds of things as well. But the thing about it is, those were passed back in 2003. We are now in 2023. And so those acts must be reviewed and must be updated in order to keep up with what is happening today. Back in 2003, people, I am sure, did not shop online the way that they are shopping online today. People could not use their cell phone and buy any sorts of things from off of Amazon or DHgate or...
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Bain and Grandstown.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I didn't want to interrupt the speaker, but before he went too far, I just wanted, by way of information, to advise him that those bills in which he speaks are currently being reviewed and currently being updated.
Thank you, honourable member.
I'm very happy to hear that. Very happy to hear that because, again, as I said, those are bills that require reviewing, and they are bills that require reviewing on a periodic basis because things continue to change in the online world, and the laws must also change as well to continue to assist. So I am happy, Bain and Grandstown. As I said, Bain and Grandstown, we want you to become the minister, and so we are happy. We are happy that those are there. But, Madam Speaker, there is even myself was there was an attempt to involve me in a scam. I remember just recently using my a debit card to make a purchase online. And I'm sure that there are other persons who have gone through the same thing because I saw it on social media as well. I was just finished using my debit card to make a purchase online. Minutes after that, I got a call on my house phone. Because it was a Saturday morning, I got a call on my house phone, which was strange because most times my house phone is not publicized and only close family would call me on my house phone. But I got a call on my house phone from somebody who claimed to be from the bank that I had my debit card from. And they said, they asked me if they said, is this Mr. Thompson? I said, yes, this is Mr. Thompson. They said, we just were informed that your card was used in some unauthorized purchase. I said, really? I said, well, I just used my card a couple of minutes ago. And they said, well, we need you to give us
Don't give nothing. Don't give
your card number.
Don't tell them bye-bye.
So,
Click.
so again, when all I heard was my card was being used for some, and then they asked me for my card number. And then it hit me, hold on.
Just say 1, 2, 3,
If,
4, 5, 6.
if you calling from the bank, then you should have my card number. Why should I need to give you my card number?
Once you get a little invoice, you know something.
And then the minute I started to question the person started to get agitated. He started, listen, your card now is being used as a defraud. I'm trying to help you.
Trying to
Give me your number.
Trying to help yourself.
And again, when I've talked to many people from the bank, they are always friendly. But this person again got agitated. And so eventually I said, man, look, you calling from the bank, go get my number from the bank. I ain't giving you no information. And then he hung up the phone. But all that goes to show is that these things are relevant today, and it doesn't matter who you are, because somehow the person would have gotten my home number and would have gotten my name, and because I used the card recently, they were probably notified somehow online that I used the card or I used my debit card to make a purchase. So somewhere the law was being broken because someone had access to information that they ought not have access to. And so that information, again, ought to be covered by the updated law when it comes to the acts that I spoke about, the Electronic Communications Act and the Computer Misuse Act. Those are things that obviously need to be looked at. Also, things like non-monetary transactions, where consumers increasingly acquire free goods and services in exchange for their personal data. Governments now are today looking at how they protect the consumers from providing access to their personal data. Also, when it comes to digital content products, nowadays, consumers make their own digital products by using digital platforms. There's a platform today when it comes to flyers and these things that we put out there online. I make my own, but I use a particular platform to do so. And the law needs to be updated as to things like who owns that product and how can I use that product, and whether or not the persons whose platform it is can use that product without my permission. So those are issues that also consumers need to be protected for, because those are things that are relevant today. Those are, in fact, I believe they are more relevant today than a lot of the brick and mortar points about persons being defrauded and those things. So we need to also look at how do we tackle those online predators? How do we deal with things like unsolicited emails? I have a host of emails that come in that thankfully the platform that I use is able to decipher them and put them in spam. And I don't even look at the spam stuff. But there are persons who are bombarded every day with unsolicited emails. And so the law also has to protect persons from how do you now deal with protecting yourself from unsolicited emails and those things. And then using mobile devices. Before, persons would have to go and use a computer to be able to order these things and do e-commerce by just using their computer. Now, more people use their mobile devices than they use a laptop or they use an ordinary computer. But a lot of those terms and conditions are not suited to be viewed on a mobile device. And so again, you must be able to prescribe by law how should a provider or a e-commerce provider deal with making sure that you understand the terms and conditions. You know, there's something in law that when you look at exclusion clauses and when you look at being able to protect, to be able to exclude your liability, there's some things that have to be put out in red in order for you to pay attention to it. But how do you translate that into a mobile phone device where automatically those things are going to be in very, very small print? They're very, very small print on your computer screen. So how do you now deal with the very, very small print on your mobile device? So again, these are issues that are things that the law have to look at, and how the law must be able to protect persons. And then we must also ensure that persons at the Consumer Protection Agency have the necessary expertise to deal with online protections, that they have the expertise, that they have the knowledge, that they have the funding, that they have all of the wherewithal to be able to deal with these kinds of issues. We can't just be caught back in the brick and mortar issues, but we must make sure that they are supplied with those things to be able to protect persons today. Madam Speaker, there's an issue that I wish to raise again on behalf of my constituents, which really is the price control issue. And it is something that I believe the government, and I will implore the government again, to revisit VAT on, and I won't say bread basket items, and I'll tell you why I won't say bread basket items, but that they should revisit VAT on essential food items.
That's inclusive.
Yes, inclusive of bread basket, but my view is that that bread basket ought to be expanded to include fruits, vegetables, and all healthy food. So again, it's not something that we look at just the ordinary bread basket items as they are now, but we believe that they should include taking VAT off of the existing bread basket items, but also taking VAT off of all essential healthy food items, which means taking VAT off of fruits, taking VAT off of vegetables, taking VAT, and there can be a complete list of items that we look at taking VAT off of those essential food items. It is something also that I believe the government, there was a process where when they looked at the price control issue, that I believe you started a process that I would encourage you to continue, which is you started having a conversation with the grocers. And there was a back and forward in terms of which food items the grocers would have included in the price control list, or you know, there was a back and forward in reference to that. I believe that that is something that ought to be continued until there is a long-term vision plan or a long-term plan for a long-term solution. You didn't arrive at an agreement, and your decision was to go ahead and proceed with your decision, I accept that it was made with that intention, but your decision was something that was done temporarily. But they were offering to be able to put forward a selective list. I think we need to revisit what they were looking at and revisit those list of items that they were looking at. Even persons, and I made mention of this when I spoke the last time, which was the Anglican bishop. And I want to read what the Anglican bishop said about this. He said,
Bishop?
"The challenge for me is VAT was decreased from 12 to 10%, which alleviates the strain on the poor person. However, VAT was then put on bread basket items. This is hard for poor people. I know that it is complicated, but could we take VAT back off of bread basket items and off of fruits and vegetables and also could we allow the poorer citizens to eat better and more economically?
They don't want to take it out.
Again, it is something that we believe you should revisit. Countries like Portugal zero rated a number of issues, and this is just last year. They zero rated a number of issues, a number of their food. So, for example, Portugal did it temporarily. They did it up to October, and this month they extended it again to the end of this year. Cereals, bread, onions, tomatoes, cauliflower, pumpkin, fruits, apples, all of these things was what Portugal did. In addition to Portugal, Spain did the same thing, Germany did the same thing, Poland did the same thing, and Trinidad and Tobago also did the same thing. So all of them looked at what impact high food prices were having, and very recently they decided that they were going to take VAT off of those essential food items. I'm not saying bread basket, I'm saying all essential healthy food items, VAT ought to be removed from those items. So, Madam Speaker, in looking at the consumer prices, one of the major things that consumers must be protected from is high inflation prices and high food prices. And one of the immediate impacts that we would be able to do is to take VAT off of essential healthy food items. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.